A powerful eruption took place in 1966 near the city of Donetsk, Ukraine. An estimated 33,000 cubic meters of molten lava buried an entire village along with its unsuspecting inhabitants alive. But the eruption was not from a volcano. And just a very short quote from a professor, head of a national level university of geology. He said, "A volcano eruption in the most direct sense of the word. The scene around reminded me of the last days of Pompeii." The hill which erupted was not a volcano. It was a spoil tip which actually erupted. Out of the 580 spoil tips in the area, 114 have a molten core because of the chemical reactions which take place inside of these artificial mountains consisting of the waste product of the mining industry. And the spoil tips not only behave exactly like volcanoes, they also look exactly like volcanoes. So in this documentary, I'm gonna propose to you a new angle, a new perspective from which to see various features of the landscape on Earth, which we automatically call natural, but in reality they may not be completely natural. At least in the sense that most people use the word natural in, meaning without conscious intelligent design or purpose. And just one small side note about the eruption in Donetsk that I just mentioned. Although it took place some half a century ago, it actually appeared in the news and in the newspapers very, very recently, when it was declassified as a secret information. Probably it was made secret to start with, just because they didn't want the people in the region and in general to know how dangerous actually the spoil tips can be. So amongst the various classifications of the volcanoes, we have a type called cinder cone volcano. Many of the cinder cones are actually big, regularly shaped piles of slag. Yes, that very same slag, like the waste material of the mining industry. So how do we know that all cinder cones are real cinder cones? Maybe some of them are actually spoil tips left from the previous advanced civilizations. Apparently, the fact that some of them can erupt is not a proof that they are real volcanoes. Occasionally, on aerial images, we can observe stuff like this. Hills or piles of different composition. If they really popped up from the earth, from below, it would have been expected that they would have the same composition. So later on I'm gonna return to the topic of the suspicious looking hills with few other types, but first I want to show you the images that impressed me most and convinced me that there could be some seed of truth in this hypothesis that many of the landscape features that we call natural are actually very, very ancient mines. This is in Argentina, of course. It's a natural park officially, as everything else. And this is the photograph that I found really, really informative. Just look at these long scratches, these lines. Maybe climbers' gear could have left such type of scratches. Do you think that's possible? I'm not sure that's even possible because look at the sheer scale of everything. This is giant. I don't know how could have human climbers left such very long and actually very thick marks. So I spent a really, really long time looking at these images, and first of all I thought, well, maybe it is natural after all, because this seems to be grown, cultivated stones. As you can see, these typical spikes, this is how it was grown, farmed. For more details, see my previous videos on growing stones like living creatures. So first of all, I thought, yes, this could be a natural erosion because the softer feeling in between the spikes would erode first. But then if we look more carefully, we don't see harder cones which get exposed by the erosion, but we see actually round drills. Here you can see my point more clearly. This edge here is also very suspicious, as if some sort of a drill was pushing the stone away. Was it melting it as it was drilling to form such an edge? And in addition, at this very site in Argentina, we have these high, flat walls. And this doesn't seem to follow the natural pattern by which this stone should erode. This is how the stone naturally erodes. It exposes the spikes. So the overall impression here is that this was an artificially cut wall at some point. And we have the same situation with modern mining. The wall is cut and below it there is a perfectly flat surface for the machinery to move on. So this national natural park may turn out to be a very, very interesting place. If somebody from Argentina is watching, maybe they can go and scout how is it and maybe send better images. This is at a different location and again shows the natural erosion pattern. The softer stuff between the stems of the mushrooms falls apart first, while the stems of the stone mushrooms remain stronger. And then the other image which really caught my attention was this one. I believe it's in America. So we have a perfectly flat wall which has eroded. Yeah, those holes on the sides, that's typical erosion by the elements. But how did this wall end up so smooth? And it doesn't seem to be just a small patch of it. Both sides of the alleged canyon are precisely cut like this. Yes, this looks like natural erosion. But about this, I'm really not sure. It's like polished, and at places it's even darker, reaching even black. Like Petra, by the way. Again, we have a wall of darker color, which seems to be cut before the fancy carvings. Again at Petra, cutting very high walls. Again with excellent precision. I'm gonna return to Petra later on in the video. There is so much material, it's sometimes difficult to structure the sequence of the presentation. So we're back at the American Canyon. I'm sure that the penguins already have a very entertaining story to tell us. how a river was cutting this canyon for millions of years, and it will sound very scientific because they will know all the millions of years with great precision, and with great authority will link it to other events which are equally imaginative. But the point is, rivers don't cut such precise walls, just perfectly vertical. And particularly suspicious I find those rivers which go across mountains, mountain ranges. How could they have cut through the mountain range? That would be a barrier for them to start with. I mean, how would they climb up there initially to start with their million years long erosion idea? But on the other hand, if a river finds a canyon which is already cut as a part of mining, yes, the river will be very happy to flow through it. And now these are images of actual quarries of our civilization. Decide for yourself if the American Canyon that I just showed you is more similar to these images or more similar to riverbanks. Again, notice where the lady is sitting. That cavity is really a product of the erosion caused by the elements. But the rest of the wall doesn't look like that at all. Now this is a bit of interesting picture. Yes, the boulder on the back, that could have split naturally. Maybe. But what about these cute round marks on the purple wall? That's kind of interesting. Looks a bit like a tool mark. Now what happens very often during the so-called open cast mining, you put a monster in the middle and it tears up the earth around in a circle, pretty much like an amphitheater. Now I would like to show you a few interesting amphitheaters from Antarctica. So of course every penguin will swear to death that this is completely natural, but I stared at this image very long time and certain questions started arising in my mind in relation to penguins and amphitheaters. Now let's have a close look at this couple of amphitheaters here. So officially the winds were blowing, drops of water were falling, and the ostriches were singing as well, and all this accompanied by temperature fluctuations, and so appeared an amphitheater in the solid rock. If it was only one and it was so regularly shaped, I could imagine it. But with so many of them and all of them so regular, I have difficulty imagining it. But let's assume it's true. But then I'm asking myself, why is this edge so sharp? Was it some sort of micro winds, so to say? Was there a microclimate only inside at this particular spot where the amphitheater is? Cutting this amphitheater and the next one so precisely, and when they met they formed this very sharp and precise edge. Is it even possible to have so tiny microclimates? such a small space so that you have local winds which blow with such precision at a precise angle, and then a few meters away you have the next set of special winds which shape this sharp edge. No, it's not the winds, nor is the specific angle at which the sunlight falls on the rocks, because all the amphitheaters around, I see them having such precise edges at different angles. I don't know, snowfall, that also seems to be pretty much the same in the area, that wouldn't form such sharp edges. The point I'm making is that the force or the thing which formed this amphitheaters really seemed to have been in the center and working with precision. If you can think of any force of the elements that could do that, please let me know on the forum, because I could not imagine any scenario in which the so-called natural elements could produce such an effect. Whatever alleged erosion would have caused the amphitheaters themselves, at least should have smoothened that sharp edge. And two more images of the same region. Again, we have a clever river that cut vertical walls and then made a completely flat bed. And yet another image at which I really looked a long time. Now the author of the blog where I found it commented on it. Look, here we have even the tracks of the vehicles which were servicing the mine. I thought, wow, that's a bit brave to say. But if we look carefully, it may turn out to be true after all. First of all, if you notice, they kind of go down and then a little bit up in this area, maybe. Another point is that they start from the foot of the rock wall. They don't come from the right side where it seems the valley continues, and that would be the natural direction to follow if these were lines left by the flowing water from the melting ice. In addition, here they seem to really cross each other, which shouldn't have been the case if these lines were left by water flow. So I agree that it is possible, maybe these are vehicle tracks indeed, but not necessarily connected to mining, possibly connected to mining, but on the other hand, it seems that there is a lot going on in Antarctica, we don't know even what, so maybe vehicles are going to that slope for some other reason. Our modern vehicles, I mean. This is a modern excavator monster at work. Please note how the bedrock is cut at kind of a right angle, and then keep this in mind as you look at the next couple of images. And officially, of course, all this is natural. So, looking at these modern mines, all they need is time and erosion, and they can obtain the prestigious status of wonders of nature and become glamorously famous as their brothers in America. So this future canyon is already working on its goal to become a famous natural wonder. And this quarry looks like as if it is almost completely ready to become a natural park. Pay attention, how does the coastal line here erode really from the natural elements. And now look at the other parts of this very same coastal line where we have the smooth, precisely cut edges. And now again, look at these two actual quarries and decide for yourself, how similar are they to the allegedly natural formations that you are gonna see? Now let's have a look at the various manners by which the mining industry disposes of its waste, and then we are gonna switch to the topics of the European pyramids and Petra. So there is a whole lot of very questionable hills on Earth, like these ones from Yakutia, Siberia. They are hundreds of kilometers away from any road or any mining industry that we know of. They can have very regular shapes, and their composition is of exactly that of the spoil tips, slag, that type of material. And they can be quite impressive in size, just compare with the conifers around them. So sometimes the mining waste is piled up as a volcano, but sometimes it is disposed of in the form of long lines. And maybe that's how so-called natural formations like these lines came to existence. Of course, that's not the only possible explanation for this particular case. It could be also some sort of irrigation system, like we have something like this in Africa. Every case should be looked at separately. Yet sometimes they don't make lines, they don't make cones, they just dump the waste like that on the ground. And after many years, those same dumps would look like these allegedly fully natural hills. And then those allegedly natural hills would look like this from close, as if they're made of earth, but nothing grows on it. Well, the byproducts of mining are often very, very toxic, and no wonder that they can remain barren for a very long time. Yet another way of disposing of the waste material is to stack it in the form of flat hills. And if eventually some sort of vegetation manages to grow on them, this is what we have: a natural mountain, so-called natural mountain. There are so many table mountains on Earth, and many of them are suspiciously of a very precise shape. Again, this is from Yakutia, Siberia. Far away from any infrastructure, no question of mining industry, at least by our civilization, and yet some of the mountain tops are clearly cut, and the stones are of very, very uniform size. And of course, the famous Nazca Plateau. Some of the mountains also appear to be cut quite precisely, by the way. And even if they are not made of slag, we have other options as well. This is a modern method of mining, mountain top removal. Of course, I don't mean that the mountain tops of Nazca were removed exactly for mining. I just want to show in general that there were many other races before us, and they were capable of cutting entire mountains with precision for whatever purpose, mining, or maybe in the case of Nazca, for landing or making some sort of other installation that most people don't have information what is it exactly for. Yet many others seem to know very well, because in China and in US we see modern installations plugged in to this type of earthworks. So it seems we, the ordinary folks, are being used as a maintenance crew, but the party which organizes all that on top level doesn't see a need to inform us what is the full project all about. So of course we have many different types of mining, and some of them give us a byproduct chalk, and this is how the hills look like. The hills of the byproducts of this industry. And then we have the so-called karst hills, which are classified as natural. This is what we get in the search results when we search for those hills. Well, what's the difference between them? The only difference is that the first group look somewhat newer and that we know of their origin. And about the second group, they look usually a bit somewhat eroded, and that makes it easier for us to close our eyes and feel comfortable with the fact that we don't know even who was mining the earth before us. Here somebody was complaining how they changed the statuses of the hills from natural to non-natural, because if it is natural it will be protected, but when they want to use it for something then they put another label. But basically they're all the same thing, a heap of chalk that has been piled up. My previous video was about how a lot of the stone, the rock on Earth, was grown, cultivated intentionally, pretty much the way we farm plants. These are some parallels between minerals, which are very well known to be growing, and a couple of species of cultivated rocks. Here is a micrograph or magnified image of the surface of a leaf of a plant. Again, the parallels are obvious. But although I have shown that a lot or even most of the rock on Earth was grown, cultivated, these are some examples of grown stones. The small ones are literally clustered around their mother. But despite that, it's possible that some of the stone spheres have a little bit of a different origin. And here our concretion is ready. After it ages enough, after it matures, it will be fit to be declared as wonder of nature, and the tourists will take pictures of it in a nature reserve of the future. And yet another third possible explanation for some of the smaller concretions. These are so-called mystery artifacts found in South Africa, buried in geological layers which the penguins assure us date from the times when we were monkeys. And very similar bowls are also found in Utah. So just compare them with their modern brothers, which are being used in this type of installations, machines, used again in the mining industry to crush rock. And now on the subject of caves, look at this allegedly natural cave, and now look at this mine. Now as this mine gets abandoned in due course of time, the wooden beams will rot, And here is the result. Your natural cave will be ready for the tourists to admire the wonders of nature. And it's not just the entrance, the inside passages of many allegedly fully natural caves, when examined carefully, turn out to have elements which cannot be natural. In other words, a lot of what we call caves are nothing else but abandoned ancient mines. Now find the difference between this mine, called the Pudnevsky mine in Russia, and the allegedly fully natural, of course, mountains of Sekret in Iran. This is yet another way to approach the problem with waste disposal in the mining industry, and as a result, entire solid hills are formed. This could have been one of the ways in which, again, so-called natural wonders have come to existence. The liquid Waste material from mining is collected in tailing ponds. Now, it is entirely possible that some of the numerous salt lakes, salt flats, etc. on our Earth formed naturally, but yet on the other hand, many of them look a little bit too suspicious not to consider the option that they could be ancient tailing ponds. Few other points make some of them even more suspicious, like for example, spoil tips right next to them or in the middle of them, or the fact that many of them have perfectly flat bottom, which doesn't have a very natural feel to it. The tailing ponds tend to be shallow, even the modern ones, and tend to have very flat bottoms, just because they were parts of mine themselves. When the given mine got exhausted, they turned it into a tailing pond and started mining the areas around. And of course, as usual, now they are regarded as wonders of nature. They are part of nature reserves, national parks, and the numerous tourists are entertained by various speculative hypotheses, which all rotate around the same pivot. How could have this natural wonder come to existence? These hills in Iran, of allegedly natural origin, of course, are a very good illustration because they show both features together. Hills that look exactly like spoil tips, together with the saline sediments right in their foothill. Any other hypothesis which doesn't fit into the box of penguins evolving from monkeys is rejected by default. This is also a type of waste disposal of the mining industry. Now imagine you fill up this substance in some sort of rectangular shape or container. Won't you get this result? And now on the subject of underground mining. So is it possible some of the mysterious sinkholes, the number of which seems to be increasing exponentially lately, are actually the remains of very ancient mining or mining by other races? The official explanation is often very unconvincing. The hole that you see on the diagram has a proper funnel shape, which is the most natural thing to expect from a natural hole. In reality, we see something very, very different. Many of the sinkholes have remarkably smooth edges and form a perfect cylinder instead of having a shaggy-looking funnel shape. Moreover, the sinkholes are just the tip of the iceberg. Countless remarkably regularly shaped and sometimes gigantic tunnels are found on all continents, and they are given all kinds of names and explanations, all meant to divert your attention and make them look as natural as possible. And luckily for those who actively work on obscuring our history, they are very easy to keep under the radar even of the alternative researchers because it's so easy to cut off the access to them. And here is some interesting information regarding these underground tunnels obtained during a past life regression session in the state of trance. The regressed person said, although we have similarly looking underground tunnels on various continents and they look alike, still, each and every one should be looked at separately. Sometimes they would use melting, other times they would just drill, and yet in other cases they would manifest it, translate it, so to say, from the subtle plane on the physical, kind of projecting it on the material plane. Some of them are entrances to the underground kingdoms, but calling them underground kingdoms is not so precise. It would be more correct to say that they are gates to other planes of existence. Down there is an entire grid, mesh, network of such tunnels. Some are also bunkers, ruins of mines, or simply a result of rock sampling. When they found what they needed, they would extract it, sometimes directly to off-planet locations, or sometimes they would first take it to the surface where it would get processed. Then the regression guide asks for further details about this manifesting the tunnels directly from the ether or the subtle plane. Does this mean that the stone dissolves back in the ether? The patient replied that you can say so. Also, you can do it selectively. Just take whatever you want and leave the rest of the mass that you don't need. It's not that such a stone will actually really disappear. It will simply stop existing for people like us who cannot perceive the other frequencies. In the past, these tunnels were passages to other worlds. If one really needed it or was curious, one could pay a visit to the neighbors, so to say, and have a journey in the other worlds. That's how it was in the past, and some tribes still keep the memory of these passages in their legends. But now, since the humanity got channeled into this more limited reality, such journeys are difficult or impossible. Certainly, you can't go with your current physical body. Maybe some people can go with their subtle body, but even that is not very easy. They are guards, and the access is very limited. And then the regression guide is asking if they were able to create this type of tunnels exclusively using mental powers without any technical equipment. The patient replied, yes, they could and they can even now. A group of them would create a field of light. Then they would direct it as needed with their intention, and the rock would dissolve. Not even melt, but exactly dissolve, pretty much like paraffin. It wouldn't flow down like a liquid. And by the way, there is extremely valuable hint in this regression session. about the group of beings holding a field, creating a field with the power of their thoughts and intentions. And this is exactly the way we can deal with some serious problems that we face nowadays. Like, for example, the poison trails in the skies. If enough of people learn how to create and maintain the needed light fields, they could not only neutralize to some extent the effect of the poisons, but eventually even derail the full program of spraying, influencing the material world around and the events that happen to us with the power of our thoughts. It's not as easy as some New Age cheap literature tells us, just wish and it will happen. No, it doesn't work that way. It is somewhat more complicated than that, but it is certainly within the scope of each and every ordinary person. It's not only for people born with special abilities. Anybody can learn, and the only requirement for it is to wish it strong enough. And now let's get back to mining. So what these big machines do is they strip a thick layer of the earth. Here they do it even on 2 levels at once. And what's left behind when they are done with their job is really a barren, stripped, and perfectly flat patch of land. So, is it really a strange coincidence that we have similar natural, again, allegedly natural landscapes on almost every continent? Australia having probably the biggest chunk of it, and Africa is not far behind. How come they're stripped completely of soil and perfectly flat? We see that some sort of minimal vegetation does grow there after all. So for all these millions of years that they are always talking with great confidence in their penguin books, there should have been at least some sort of thin layer of soil. Where is it? Is it possible that these regions were devastated by such a large scale mining, so to say? Of course, it's possible. And waste products of such a large scale mining could be maybe in Sahara. Why not? For more details, see the Survivors episode on the artificial origin of Sahara. And if you think that it is a little bit too far-fetched to suggest that all the waste was transported to Sahara, just have a look at Mount Nimrud. Not only this pile consists of some sort of pebbles that really look like an industrial waste, but also this pile happened to land at a very strategic place, covering a historic site in front of which there are very, very interesting statues, which suggest that the site itself might also be extremely interesting. And it's not just Nimrud. Also the Nursuntipe that I've reviewed in previous videos, the Great Pyramid of Cholula, Teotihuacan, and so many others you can find in my videos and on the website. Always the same question: who put this pile on the top of the historic site? So we clearly have some party which is fond of piling up stuff on historic sites. So it is not so far-fetched to suggest that this party as well buried under sand what we call the ancient Egyptian civilization. In reality, it may not be really ancient. More information on this point again in the Survivors episodes on Egypt. And now on spoil tip pyramids. There is a choice for every taste. This is for those who like them Nubian style. Or maybe you prefer Teotihuacan spoil tip. Well, no wonder then that we have so many pyramidal shaped hills in southern Europe. Here is a full row of them. Is it possible that they are spoil tips? Of course, anything is possible. But from whatever very scarce information we have so far, based mostly on the Bosnian pyramid and very little about the Lapertus, and the pyramidal shaped hill that I spotted just by chance as I was traveling in Spain. So my overall impression is that they are not spoil tips, and some of them were created, built in a way, while many others just look like pyramids from certain angle and are not proper pyramids, which was the case with the one I saw in Spain. Now, I would like to share with you my impression about the Bosnian pyramid, or at least the one I'm getting so far. So, up until very recently, I found it very hard to make any sense of this site, the Bosnian pyramid, because on the aerial images you see a couple of very regular pyramids, but on the ground it's quite contradictory. For example, this is shown as being cement, and probably it is. But I've been hiking in Europe in many countries, and I can assure you that in the wilderness you see this type of, I don't know what is it, cement or stone or whatever it is, really a lot. And the first time I saw it in the forest, I also thought it is that I've discovered a ruin, but as we walked for 5 more kilometers, it turned out that maybe it was a city, or maybe at the end I decided most likely it is some sort of stone. I don't know how it was made, but from experience I can tell you for sure that this is not a proof that this pyramid was built. Here is a mysterious wall in America, by the way. It appears to be made of this same type of beton, cement. Okay, let's get back to the Bosnian pyramid and the proofs that are being shown as of its artificial origins. So photos like this are shown, and we are told this is pavement. No, this is not pavement. If you just look further on these very images that are shown from the side, you will see that this is stone, a rock, and that's how it fractures. This is not pavement for sure. And in a little while, these very same layers turn into what everybody would call natural stone. So that's why I found, until recently again, this site to be very confusing, and I never commented on it. And only after I found out that a lot of the rock on Earth was actually grown, cultivated, then everything fell into place. And now I understand each and every image I saw of the Bosnian pyramid. This is also from the side. Do you see the typical stone growing patterns? You have to see my previous video to understand everything that I'm saying now about the Bosnian pyramid, But now I'm absolutely convinced that it was grown. Maybe you can say manifested. Was it grown from a substance, let's say soil, or from air, or from sand, or as there are other versions, uh, directly from the ether? That I cannot say yet. But also pay attention that there are stone spheres, concretions in the area and at the pyramid side itself. And the concretions are definitely grown, cultivated stone. So there was growing of stone going on in this area. And guess where is this pyramid located? It's in America, exactly in that area with a lot of mushroom testing and all those buns of rising mushroom stone dough. It seems that that was one testing place, laboratory on growing stone. I believe it was confirmed by one past life regression as well. So apparently the races which were involved in growing stone on Earth were already using this pyramidal shape. And in addition, this stone, the Bosnian pyramid, seems to be very similar to this one, which was also most likely cultivated. More details in my previous video and one much older video where I touch also the subject of exactly these stones. These artifacts were also found in the vicinity of the Bosnian pyramid and appear to be cast of some sort of stone, because two different types of stone mixture was used. Or actually anything that appears to be cast could have been also grown. Now this is also supposed to be a thick layer of cement from the Bosnian pyramid. This really looks like cement and only like cement. Was it also grown or it was cast, built in a way that is closer to our understanding? I don't know, but as a conclusion, my impression till now is that the Bosnian pyramid is made of cultivated stone, mostly or entirely. The artificial passages at Petra, which are in no way different from the Via Cavas of Italy, for example, not only are amazing for their sheer scale, so the first question is who did it, but also why? I mean, the sheer height of it. Well, I think we're still far away from tackling who or why about Petra. But still, I want to show you a few new interesting things that I noticed about Petra. Now, let's have a close look at the stone, which looks like as if it is molten. Let's see if it only really looks like, or that's what it is exactly. Now, first of all, pay attention here. Do you notice the cavity, the hollow space? And in front of it, there is a relatively thin stone of molten-like layer. Now, the penguin explanation of this is that the rain was raining and raining, and it eroded the hollow space inside, but left the outer layer. Isn't it amazing? There is barely any rain in Petra, which falls vertically down from the sky. But at these cavities, they have even rain, and apparently abundance of it, which rains horizontally to make those cavities. Now look here at the original layers of the stone. A reddish layer above, a whitish layer below. And now look at the molten layer on the top. Not only it is of a different color, and this color happens to be the mixture of the two original layers, but it also obviously and clearly has a volume, a shape of itself. It is not just a coloring of the stone as the prolific rains in the desert rain over there in Petra for the penguins to tell us stories, but this really was a molten stone at some point. And now please compare the damages at Petra with the damages which a brick wall suffered during the Second World War due to explosion and subsequent fires. Now please compare the damages at Petra with these formations which are found in caves where rivers of molten lava were flowing. Eventually the lava would solidify, and this is how it looks like when it does. And if you still have any doubts as of the origin of the damages on Petra, just look at this. Now look at the layers showing the original structure of the stone. Reddish, whitish, orange. Now look at the coloration of the brown and white river of stone, which started flowing when it was melted. This is an absolutely mind-blowing photograph. Really, a river of stone caught in petrification as it was flowing. Now let's make some general conclusions about Petra based on what I previously knew. It's all in this video, and the things I recently found out, which includes also the farming, the cultivation of rocks. First of all, the bedrock of which the area consists might have been cultivated, grown, or at least the clearly orbicular patterns on the rock give such an impression. But on the other hand, we can't be sure because the destruction waves of the weapon or whatever tool or technique or approach was used to destroy Petra also tends to leave similar patterns on the stone surface that it damages. Again, remember that the brown and white river of molten stone here has the very same kind of orbicular patterns. It is also possible that initially Petra was a fully underground city, and these tunnels with the burned smooth walls, they could be just an aftermath of the destruction. Like if somebody was trying to destroy an underground city from above and was directing some sort of weapon, it kind of made passages, and that's why we see, you can see that in the video which I referred to before, that there are a lot of remains of premises rooms on the sides of such destroyed walls, and the passages are quite narrow. That means those rooms were situated exactly where there are passages now. And the destruction must have been carried on a really grand scale. Do you notice the poor remains of some sort of staircase here? So there are remains of staircase here not because the people were crazy enough to build parts of a staircase in the middle of the road or in the middle of the desert, but because the entire structure to which the staircase were leading is now evaporated, missing, destroyed, molten down, disappeared. Here around, its spare parts are rolling in the dust. And of course, structures like the so-called treasury belong to a much more recent era. And this is not Petra anymore. This is the place of the goblins, which we visited in the previous video. I actually think that the goblins must have settled over there when they found the vacant ruins of the stone growing laboratory, which might have been destroyed by the same weapon. Or maybe it wasn't even a weapon. Maybe this stone, because it is grown as mushrooms, maybe it reacts with time with some sort of natural element and produces this type of effect. Don't forget that this might have been a laboratory for testing species of growing stone. So maybe this one was not very strong, or maybe it tends to react to certain conditions in this way, or maybe it was too young, still soft when this happened, or maybe this happens to it when it's too old, God knows. And so, speaking of rock-cut passages, we are not in Petra or somewhere in Europe anymore. This is America. I couldn't believe it. Officially in Petra, they are called flood defense system. In Europe, the very same thing. It's called via cover, or at other places they don't call them anything, just ignore them and exclude them from history. And here in America, they call them underground rivers. Wow! 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 Here they call them natural chainwork of channels. That's on the home page. At other places, they are more honest and tell the story that this is a historical and archaeological site which was sold to a businessman who made it into an aqua park. Apparently even the penguins sometimes have some sort of shame and don't want to lie so much. That's maybe because they evolved from monkeys, and the monkeys have some shame. So, most probably various races have been mining on Earth, but that is far behind the horizon for the scope of the understanding of the modern man, who is not even clear and doesn't even care who is he himself. what to speak about inquiring into who are those others. But as far as mining and then smelting the ore within the historic time frame of what we call known history, that is the history that we think we know all about. Talking about that specific time frame, we were taught by those others how to smelt the ore and extract valuable elements from it. The proof that we have been exactly taught how to do it and we didn't discover it by ourselves, you can find in these two videos. Some people also believe that some of the product of the mining was exported off planet. Anything is possible, of course. I haven't seen such information coming from any reliable source, but it could be going on even now, just by looking at the price tags of various substances. It appears certainly to be unrelated to the financial reward that the miners receive for their hard work. And combine all this with the fact that we have no clue what is going on in space. While the sheeple are being entertained with fake computer-generated images about the so-called space missions, what is actually going on over there, we have no clue. They could be transporting stuff. This is a video of an alleged volcano allegedly erupting, caught on video. Decide for yourself, does it look like as if a stream of molten lava finally breaks through upwards, or does it look more like a simple explosion? Like the explosions of the spoil tips. Hello! During the past couple of weeks, strange phenomena were observed in the skies by millions. People observed red sun, black sun, blinking sun, and a strange ball of light. Although all these four were observed over 3 or 4 continents by millions, or at least by tens of thousands of people, still the official so-called science doesn't seem to show vivid interest in researching them, and in addition they received suspiciously little attention from the mainstream media. Instead of that, they successfully continued, as usual, to bamboozle the masses with fairy tales about black holes, which of course are very far away, invisible, and therefore you can say whatever you wish about them, and as long as it is full of complicated scientific terms, and of course it will look all very real because it's scientific, and it is backed up, of course, by colorful, eye-catching illustrations. In this way, the attention of the masses is diverted, and at the same time, people get the feeling that they are learning something important, while in reality they are losing even a grasp of what is happening in their immediate vicinity, just above their heads. Now let's start with the red sun, which may look like the most innocent out of the four that I just listed. It was observed in France, UK, parts of Germany, almost all of Scandinavia, and places in the Baltics region. These are actual images from Scandinavia from that day. Pay attention to the position of the pointers of the clocks. In the middle of the day, all of a sudden it became so dark that even the sheeple, who are usually so preoccupied with grazing that they don't see what's happening around, even they went into panic mode and decided that it is the end of the world. And since they were so confused, they didn't know what else to do but to call their shepherds on the emergency hotlines. I'm not joking, they really did that, and complain to them that probably the end of the world is coming. Bang! Can you do something? So the shepherds replied to them that don't you worry, this is by the way now from London, don't you worry, these are clouds from Sahara and from the fires of Spain, and no, it is not yet the end of the world. You are not yet brought to the slaughterhouse. We'll feed you a bit more so that you become a bit fatter, and then you will qualify. And so the local news outlets told the people, don't you worry, these are just clouds from Sahara, and it looks so scientific. Look at the scientific diagram. Yeah, so also if you see it in the newspaper, you wouldn't really bother to read that this is actually a forecast. It means another imagination. And in France, people were told these are the fires in Spain, they're smokes, don't you worry. Really? Then how come on this day, and definitely on the next 17th of October, the same red sun was observed in Russia, the Baltics, and according to some reports, even in USA and the Philippines? In Russia, it was observed by thousands that not only it was unusually red for a long time, but it also blinked, turned completely black, and then again in a second it switched back to normal. While it turned to black, it did not become dark. I mean darker on Earth, although the day was dark as such because of the red sun already. It didn't turn darker when it switched off.
So the sun turning red and black was observed in the Russian city of Pskov and the surrounding areas. And while the red sun phenomenon lasted long, the black blinking was very short. I don't know if anybody captured that particular black sun, but this is a footage of a previous such phenomenon which lasted much longer, and people had time to take out their cell phones and film it. So, what thousands of people witnessed in Pskov is extremely important, because it shows the connection between the red sun and the black sun and the blinking of the sun. Yes, the sun blinks. So the blinking occurred in Russia, and just the days before that, on 13 October 2017. It happened in front of the eyes of thousands of Nigerians. This is now an actual footage of the Nigerian blinking. It continued long enough for the people to film it, and again it was witnessed by thousands. And it was strong, not something slight. The miracle took place at the time of the Christian religious gathering, and just a small reminder that the miracle of Fatima took place exactly on the same date, 13 October in the year 1917. Again, the miracle consisted of extremely unusual behavior, and again it was witnessed by thousands. Then, more interesting stuff in the skies again this October, and actually a couple of days ago again. Countless witnesses this time. It happened in the Damska district of Russia. It went on for some time, and was also caught on camera by two professional photographers who at that night were filming the Northern Lights.
So what people basically saw was a giant ball of light which grew in size and appeared to become less dense as it was growing. Very similar, by the way, to what was witnessed in Hawaii in 2014. Again, this is the actual footage from Hawaii. And these are non-professional photos of the Russian ball of light in the district of Tomsk. Allegedly, that ball of light in Tomsk was a result of a launch of a rocket, which we are told took place 3 hours before the phenomena was observed. Only God knows what kind of rocket is this. Is it a rocket, and where is it going? And hopefully it's not like all the others, which pathetically simply make a U-turn and land very shortly after they have been launched. That's what we see on the amateur videos taken by honest citizens. And as far as the video footage showing a rocket which reaches space, or let's say its alleged destination, the space station, such a video nobody has seen, neither from official or amateur sources till date, although it is perfectly within the capacity of the modern photography. And in relation to space missions and so on, if you're not aware of the numerous solid proofs that all the so-called footage and photographs of the alleged space missions are nothing else but often poor quality computer generated garbage, please watch this video. A massive amount of taxpayer money is funneled into so-called space mission projects. It comes from the pockets of the citizens of all advanced countries practically. So we know what they're not doing with this money, and these are the imaginary space missions we see on TV. But what are they actually doing with the money? Is it being spent on projects like spraying us with poison trails from the skies? It's like almost daily here, at least in Europe. And sometimes after spraying, there are these weird black things in front of the sun. That shouldn't be a big problem. Apparently, the sheeple, they just look at the grass, of course, and continue playing football. As seen on these photographs, I mean. So the sun can blink, as testified by thousands, at least in Nigeria for sure. Now, this footage from Brazil, along with many other amateur videos showing the same phenomena, I really don't know what is the story behind, by how many people was it witnessed. So, in other words, the numerous additional cases cannot be considered a solid proof. But we have at least two cases, the one in Portugal 100 years ago and now in Nigeria, when we have tens of thousands of witnesses. And so the question arises, if the nature of the sun is even more or less the way we have been taught in school, and since people have definitely seen it blinking, and since we have supposedly only one sun, why the people in the other parts of the world did not see it blinking as well? So something doesn't seem to match, or maybe the sun is not, we are told, after all. Not to mention that the moon, the other celestial body that we can observe relatively well, also doesn't behave as supposed. Do you see the waves that pass through the how to say, the moon, or the image of the moon, or maybe what we think is the moon is actually only an image? So a good number of such waves on the moon have been filmed by independent sky watchers, who, by the way, have attempted many times to collaborate with official scientists and find out together what's going on, but apparently the official establishment has no interest in studying the lunar waves. They're more into the abstract stuff, so to say. Stuff that the common people can't see. In reality, the fact that the sun is blinking will look confusing and strange only for those who are disconnected from the truth, those whose sense of discrimination has been distorted by wrong education, and the real down-to-earth people in the real sense of the word, they will understand that this is not impossible. Because those who felt that there is a higher sense in life, there is more to living than grazing, those who really ask themselves, who am I and why did I get born on earth? They already know that they live in a holographic world, in a world of illusion, something unreal. And the sun and the moon, of course, they are holograms. They cannot be anything else, because all that we perceive in our senses are holographic images anyway. And this is not a truth that has been discovered recently, as it may appear by reading the articles shown on the screen. This is also most essential part of many, if not most, ancient traditions. For example, see Hinduism, the world, the perceivable world, which most people call real, is nothing but a manifestation of Maya, the illusory energy of the creator, or in modern terms, in this case, he will be called the software developer who wrote the code for the game in which we live in, because the life that so many of us take so seriously is none different than getting carried away by a computer game to the point that you really feel what the imaginary character avatar from the screen is doing at the moment. Okay, so how do you make the sun blink or take upon different colors in a computer game? Well, as far as the particular game in which we live in and in which you hear this video, 99% of us at least have taken the avatars of sheeple. And that particular character of the online game unfortunately has got not enough privileges. He, the sheep, or she, the sheep, won't be able to remove the image of the sun or change its color even on its own computer screen. What to speak of switching it on and off for the other users of the game. No, it doesn't work like this. I think you need the minimum, at least the avatar of a magician to do such things. And of course, all the moderators of the game also have privileges, much higher even than those of the magicians and the shamans. The best example of somebody who's got the privileges of a moderator in our computer game of our lives is Jesus Christ. And maybe it's not by chance that the lamb is one of the most prominent symbols of Jesus. It makes sense, after all, to appear as a lamb amongst the sheeple so that they will accept you as one of them and you can spread your message more effectively. And it is not just in the Eastern spiritual traditions that this world is viewed as illusory. Also, in the traditional paradigm of the tribes in South America, for example, in the Amazon jungle, of that I have direct experience. I'm talking of tribes that are semi-civilized. We don't really have access to really wild ones, because once they get in touch with us, they're no longer wild. So they also definitely consider this life, this world that we call real, to be the illusory one, while the realm of the spirits is the tangible and real one. So other people would formulate it like this, and that it is a part of their philosophical system to consider this world illusory, while the spirit world is considered the real, tangible fundament of everything. I think philosophical system is a bit exaggerated. They don't deal with such complex things. They don't have even such terms in their language to put together any philosophical system currently, at least that we can understand. In other words, these are not things that they have heard from somebody and they believe in. These are common sense, self-evident things because they still know a lot of magic. It's something obvious, self-evident in the sense that they go to the spirit realm and accomplish different tasks. Maybe not exactly switching on and off the sun, but switching on and off somebody being sick, for example, or the possibility of a certain event happening or not. They go in the spirit realm and turn on or off the switch of what they desire, and it works. So obviously the places where these switches are found, that is the control panel, that is the higher authority. Okay, so now I'm gonna try to draw some conclusions. First of all, the modern so-called science of astrophysics doesn't really aim at solving the mysteries of the creation around. It can't be trusted because it seems to be tailored to just keep us anchored in the paradigm of those who are herding us as sheep. And finding really a pure and reliable information about the universe seems to be extremely difficult. Everything is so mixed, even the alternative science. Yes, they put a little bit more truth in the mixture, but it's still not the pure thing usually. For example, years ago I used to listen to Project Camelot, and I still recommend one of Carrie's interviews with an European official. But nowadays I can't recommend her even anymore. The information there has become so much diluted with nonsense, like, for example, obvious scams like caching. The last interview which I heard was, I believe, last year, and in that interview we were told that the poison trail program of spraying has ended and they are not gonna do it anymore. And since that day, here it's like every day. While in the past I would notice it just a couple of times per month. And it is rapidly getting worse and worse. Just very recently, YouTube and the rest of the gang shamelessly, even officially announced that they are censoring alternative outlets of information. How did it impact my channel, for example? In the past, people who are interested in this type of information could find links to my videos on their homepage, like recommended by Google based on their interests. But since they implemented this new scheme of detecting truthful videos and trying to minimize their exposure, what happens is all of a sudden my traffic from that source ceased, and only people who are already subscribed, only they can still find out when I post new videos. So in other words, in the stuff that they recommend, that they channel people to, they gradually increase the percentage of garbage. They can't like immediately cut off all truth because too many people will notice, but they gradually and gradually decrease. And in a couple of years, they will cut it off completely, probably. Or they can cut off completely even the next month. I guarantee you that at least here in Europe, most people won't even notice, and those who do will do almost nothing about it. So, in other words, if you really, really wish not to become a remotely controlled zombie, in the most direct sense of these words, because even openly now they are telling us that they have a technology which can influence the thoughts of an individual from a distance. I don't know to what an extent, but at least surely the people whose spirit is not very strong do get influenced, hear voices, and after that they commit crimes as directed by those voices. So if you don't want to join that club within a couple of years, it would be a good idea to embark on a genuine spiritual practice now and strengthen the connection with your spirit, with your higher self, because very soon, or practically already, you can't really rely on spiritual guidance and somebody telling you what to do. In the past, all roads used to lead to Rome. Now all roads lead to the slaughterhouse of the sheeple, but they are not labeled properly. Instead of slaughterhouse, it is written democracy, anti-terrorism, brotherhood of all men, spiritual teacher, or even Buddhism in some cases. Let me give you an example with the Buddhism road sign towards the slaughterhouse. By chance, I happen to know a person who holds a very high government position because he's keenly interested in spirituality. He regularly goes to spiritual gatherings and in general is a very nice person if you meet him. For example, when in his local village they have some sort of celebration, he will work as a waiter for free, so he's also humble. So when I tried to talk to him on the subject of the crimes that the government he's working for basically organizes and supports, and what is his personal role in all this, being head of a commission, and he replied that, I'm just going with the flow. Yeah, that sounds very spiritual. And I just do whatever those who pull the strings on the top require. Then he continued explaining. And that's fine. Why? Because everything is one. So there is no difference anyway. And because the most important thing for a spiritual person is to love everything. So apparently he implied that this everything includes the hideous crimes that the governments organize. So are the ideas of going with the flow in life and loving everything really spiritual? Yes, most definitely. But when the wolf on this image takes them out of context, then then we have the modern society where people have become so stupid that they even go to war or commit crimes, and it is all in the name of peace and love. And now let's wind it up on a more positive note while watching a footage of two suns. If blinking and seeing black sun wasn't enough, this should be. So at the end, I just wanted to share with you what I have found so far in terms of real and genuine and pure information. I don't claim these are the only sources of pure information, but they are the best ones that I have encountered during my decades-long search of truth. The only source of which I'm aware and that I can call absolutely pure, to best of my knowledge till now, is the channeled material by Jane Roberts, published as Seth Books. The best way to start is with The Nature of Personal Reality. Free PDF form is available online. Now that's very high level information which most people will find very difficult to digest initially. Even when I read it for the first time, it was difficult for me, although I've been a fringe person, so to say, since childhood, living on the edge of the society in terms of the belief system. I never owned the TV or believed the mass media. And still it took me a couple of years until I could really get convinced that the set material is the truth. One may even need a bridge initially to make it from the current paradigm of understanding to the one proposed by Seth. And the best bridge I have found are the exercises by Yogani, which can be also found free of cost on a website called advancedyogapractices.org. It's abbreviated AYP.org. And to those who wish to directly perceive, without any delay, rather quickly, that we live in an illusory world, to them I would recommend the connection with the ancient spirit of ayahuasca. And now one final note on the quality of this particular video. When I saw it for the first time, the black dot seemed rather odd. It also changes shapes. That's one other thing the sun sometimes does. So when I first saw this footage, I really thought this black dot seems artificially added. But as I found many other footages of similar phenomena being witnessed, it turns out that really many ordinary people, when they record it with their cell phones or video cameras, that's how it looks like exactly. For example, this is a video of two guys who caught black sun while driving on their security camera. By the way, the camera was recording the audio as well, and two of them also saw it with their eyes and were even discussing it. And one of them apparently knew that this is happening sometimes. They didn't find it very, very unusual. Which, on the other hand, should not make you think that we are dealing with some simple optical illusion. Don't forget that the phenomena of the black sun was witnessed by thousands in combination with red sun and blinking sun, and that connection is extremely, extremely important. This is a black sun photographed in Canada, and this is yet just another car security camera footage, one out of the many. As far as red sun, there is such a natural phenomena as well, but of course this doesn't mean that all types of red sun are natural, at least in the sense that most people put in the word natural. But as far as black sun, no. And apparently there are different types of red sun. The one that is associated with black sun doesn't seem to be natural.